You're in, but can you hear me? That's the question. I've started the recording. Hopefully you can all hear me. Linda, you can hear me. I know that you can hear me. You said so earlier. But hopefully everyone else can hear me. Welcome, everyone. Great to have you with us. I hope you're having a good lunch break or you're balancing a cup of tea while you're kind of listening to me. It's 1:30 here in the UK. I don't know what time it is with all of you, but I hope you've got everything ready and you're looking forward to the session. So today we are going to be covering wellbeing strategy, what it looks like for 2022, what it looks like beyond. And we are Bailey & French. So my name's Anthony. I'm head of consulting here at Bailey & French. And what we do is really captured by this picture. I love this picture. We don't put it on every kind of presentation that we have, but I really like this one. I think it captures everything that Bailey & French is about. How do we make our workplaces more human now and in the future? What little things can we do to build empathy, to build compassion, to improve those retention, to build a culture where people want to come to work, but doing that in the flow of life. People are human beings. What does that mean? How do we bring it all together? How do we build organizations around people's lives and around us as human beings? And how do we get people to really flourish and thrive? How do we lean on the latest science and research into positive psychology to help us to do that? So that's everything that we're going to cover today. So hopefully you're on the right webinar. I mean, that would be ideal. And so hopefully you're going to get some of these things out of it. So current state of wellbeing, we'll go through some of the latest research and reports. I know what it's like. There's so much data out there. Well, we can do some of the kind of gathering of data and bring it all to you today. Then we'll take a look at what some of the best organizations are focused on, and therefore maybe you can take some ideas, not just for your own well-being actually, so we'll cover some of that, but also the well-being of your people and the people that you are responsible for. And we'll close up with some practical tips. We'll run through the wellbeing strategy template. If you haven't already accessed it, don't worry, we'll go through it in this and you'll be able to access it afterwards. But we'll go through a kind of practical template for you to use within your organizations. So some of the data, where are people right now? We've been through a really interesting time, and for me personally, it's been a real battle internally to go, I'm really interested as a psychologist and having background in positive psychology and looking at mental health and leadership and people development and just people more broadly, just having that curiosity. But obviously, kind of looking at all of those aspects of what it means to be human at work during this time, and it's been a really difficult time. I'm conscious there's been a few questions that have come through. You can't see my slides, so hopefully you can see those now, because that's quite important. Let me go back to the first slide so you could see what I was saying. That picture for me encapsulates what we're going to be talking about today. How do we bring the well-being strategy and what we're all about into the flow of life? And we will cover all of the data and all of those practical tips. But people right now, what are they experiencing? How are people? Well, I've looked at some of the data, and essentially what's happening is people are overworked. Management are not coping with remote working and hybrid environments, and there's kind of a bit of a skill gap happening with leadership. But also there's an enormous amount of stresses outside of work. You know, and I'm not going to mention all of the kind of COVID related things, but just some of the other things that are a consequence of the pandemic and the times that we've gone through. 16 million workers planning to change jobs, and already have been changing jobs, but even coming up. More than 6 in 10 adults worrying about their financial situation. Here in the UK, we've certainly seen that, but across the globe, we're seeing kind of the strains and stresses on those kind of parts of people's lives, and people are bringing this worry to work, and it's having a massive impact on productivity and retention and culture more broadly. How do you hold on and keep hold of that culture that's so sacred to many organizations and their success? And also looking at people being really lonely. You know, the remote we're craving human connection now more than ever before. And I think that's a really vital thing that your wellbeing strategy, if it doesn't already, needs to really tackle these key important things. But there's some good news. There is some really good news, and you can see this and have a look at, if you really want to geek out, have a look at some of the Google searches. I love doing that. It gives us a real indication of what people are thinking and feeling, even if they're not putting it into our own kind of surveys and feedback forms that we send out to organizations. But people are motivated more than ever to make a change and make a difference. And I think this is vitally important. People's role, our role in HR as business leaders, is to facilitate well-being. It's no longer about pushing people to kind of think of the importance of well-being. I responded to kind of a client response the other day that said, we really need to be educating people on the importance of well-being. The data says that we don't, actually. I think people know the importance of it. What we're seeing is there's some real key barriers for people to take action. And mostly it's because we're tired and we don't have time, and it's having a real drain on willpower. 45% or 46% or something in the Champion Health Workplace Health Report says that willpower is a real, willpower was the top reason that people just aren't making that impactful change to their personal well-being and their personal health. It's really interesting, and this surprised me, I have to say. So this stat at the bottom, where people are talking about the impact of being tired on their productivity, and actually 1 in 2 saying that tiredness and fatigue is the main thing impacting their productivity, and only 1 in 5 saying that poor mental health is impacting their productivity. So actually just being tired and languishing, and I know there's a lot of psychologists out there talking about languishing and just feeling a bit stuck. So that, what is that impact? It's actually even more beneficial for us when we're thinking about our well-being strategy. Yes, we definitely need to be thinking about mental health, but also when we start to make a move towards a more proactive, a more positive, a more kind of future-focused, sustainable well-being strategy, how can we start to look at just reducing this tiredness and fatigue and giving people the energy levels that they need to feel like they can positively overcome the challenges that they're going to be faced with. So what does this mean? Let's summarize. And we here at Bailey and French believe this fundamentally, and I love this quote from Martin Seligman. We need to be changing the way people think and talk. And actually, if we can just equip people to have a full understanding of what naturally inspires and energizing them as human beings, we can empower them to think differently about their physical and financial and social and career aspects of well-being that we know are really important. But we need to kind of just give them the foundations first. We need to give them the knowledge, educate them on what naturally inspires and energizes human beings. What is the cause of human flourishing and thriving? Let's give them the skills to have really meaningful conversations with themselves, with others, with their one-to-ones, in teams, in the flow of work. So that's really important, that well-being isn't seen as this additional thing, that program that you can go on, that well-being session that we run at lunch. It's really, really important that well-being is in the flow of work. And that encompasses not just well-being, but looking at our ED&I strategy, our leadership strategy. How does it all come together? And we need to be focusing on the whole human being. We need to be focusing on not just work and when you walk through the door, because that concept has gone. We don't just walk through the door of our workplace. Our workplace is part of our life more than it ever has been before, with remote working and hybrid working, etc. And thinking about the differences, I think one of the things that I've been amazed at, and the thing that I've really learned and taken away from the pandemic, is being really curious about the different experiences that we have inside and outside of work. There's lots of data on the impacts of different social classes, different races, different genders, and the impact and the different experiences that we've all been experiencing. Even though we've been experiencing the same event, we've experienced things in very different ways. So thinking about the whole human being and supporting them inside and outside of work. It's a whole life strategy. It's not just an internal strategy. And when we think about the willpower, when we think about the reasons why people are not making these changes, community and human connection, we know that if we say things out loud and we make a commitment to people out loud, it has a massive effect on whether people actually make that change and that difference. Well, how are we in our wellbeing strategies creating those community moments of human connection to make sure that willpower doesn't become a blocker? And in fact, actually us as a group can inspire each other to do more and do better. So these are the things that we need to take into account. I love some of this data, some of it's relevant, some of it won't be. I always like to, when we look at data, go, well, what happens when we do and take this approach? And Gallup have done a really great study. I really like their data on this. But also what happens when we don't move in this direction, because the expectations of our people has changed. It was changing, but it's definitely changed now. We've got new generations coming in. We've got different challenges that lay ahead, and the pandemic, maybe, touch wood, we're seeing the kind of the drop off of that. Certainly here in the UK, there's rumours about kind of removing restrictions, but it doesn't mean that we aren't going to be faced with extreme challenge and change over the next few months, years, etc. So how are we equipping our people for that? And what's the cost if we don't? And I like what the Centre of Medical Health have published there. But what's the impact on burnout? What's the kind of the impact on worrying and sadness and anger and all of these emotions that are really harmful to organizations' culture and really harmful to productivity and efficiency more broadly? And we here at Bailey and French kind of focus on a few areas of what we call, what a lot of people are calling the human experience. We focus on leadership and kind of how do we be more empathetic and authentic, and how are we building these more inclusive role models at the top of our organizations, and how are we kind of in the flow of work helping our teams and supporting our teams. But today I'm going to be focusing on the other element, which is human flourishing. So human flourishing, and I'll go through this, but how are we as individuals taking ownership and responsibility and accountability for our own well-being and the well-being of others, using this framework as we go? So I don't know how many of you have already come across the PERMA model. The question that I usually get is, yes, we've heard of it, but we don't really know how to apply it. Or we tried to apply it in our organization, but it didn't really land very well. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. I suppose for those of you who may not have come across it, there's a link there on Dr. Martin Seligman and the work that he's put into this. It's a relatively new model in terms of positive psychology as a kind of basis. 2012 was when he kind of founded this framework for greater well-being and human flourishing. He also talks about it a lot in the book Authentic Happiness and others that he's published. But the PERMA model is incredibly powerful. It's what us as human beings need to flourish and to thrive. What are the conditions? What are the components? And if we can keep these components topped up and be really conscious with the activities and initiatives that we put in place, and make sure that they align to this model, we will have people who are able to think clearly, feel like they've got the energy to overcome some challenges and take ownership of their well-being. They'll be able to better manage their time, which we know is a key blocker to people not taking action on their own well-being. It puts them in a more positive mindset. It puts them in a solution mindset rather than thinking about all the weaknesses and the threats and the things that could go wrong if we make that change. Change is a scary thing, but it doesn't have to be if we apply what actually human beings are fundamentally drawn to and are naturally brilliant at. We just need to educate people on what is PERMA, what are the different elements, and how do we bring that to life in our organizations. So PERMA is the acronym for this model, and it stands for the positive emotions, the engagement, the relationships, the meaning, accomplishment, and resilience. Positive emotions are things like gratitude and optimism, hope, all of those kind of emotive languages that help maybe inspire people. You'd probably come across them more in marketing and communications because it's how we communicate more positively together. Engagement is more about our strengths. What makes you unique? What is it about you, and what do you love doing? And how do we do more of that in our life? You know, myself, I like to think big. I like to think strategically. If I'm doing a detailed project, it can be quite draining. So I need to know how to manage those strengths throughout my life and throughout my work, so that I don't feel drained. And when I feel drained, I feel kind of quite negative, and I could impact the culture quite negatively when I do that. So there's all of these kind of core elements of PERMA. I won't go through all of them. Have a look at them, research them yourselves. But a question that I like to work, and I guess a lot of you may be even thinking about this. We know that certainly in the UK and other countries around the world, we're asking ourselves this question about 5-day, 4-day work weeks. Now, I'm not going to make any comment on which one would be better, but just to put into practice what we practically mean when we say applying the PERMA model. Well, what would you do with your extra day if you had it? Assuming, of course, that you're working 5 days a week at the moment, but what would you do with that extra day? Now, if you were applying the PERMA model, what would you be doing to top up and make sure that what you were doing throughout that day was related to this? How would you be making sure that you reflect on and be grateful for the things that you were doing in that day? How would you play to your strengths, or at least be conscious of those things during that day? What would you be choosing to do? Would it be something that aligns with something that naturally energizes you and who you are at your best? So have a think, reflect on that question, if you don't mind, for 2 seconds. What would you do with that extra day? Have it written down. And that might be spending time with family. You know, you could keep it quite broad, but the more specific you can think about that day and think about it in alignment with the PERMA model, how are you bringing in these key components to that day? Obviously, it's a little bit easier, and this is why, you know, Martin Seligman was also talking about the PERMA model being the most kind of reliable and practical ways of measuring and improving well-being across our organizations, because of that kind of work element to it. So have a think about what you would do with that day, and how does it relate to the PERMA model. You've probably already written a number of things, and I'm conscious of time, and we've only got half an hour, so maybe we'll keep reflecting on it. But that's the premise of what we're trying to do when we're looking at the wellbeing strategy and practical steps to build the PERMA model into it, and help you to use the PERMA model as a framework for your initiatives. And whether that's local initiatives with your team, with, you know, people that are close by, your department, or whether you're looking at a global wellbeing strategy, this is a really good way to do that. So those of you who haven't accessed the wellbeing strategy or seen it before, essentially it's a quick guide, and you can build on this, you can take it away, use it yourselves. But it's a quick guide to connecting the PERMA model with kind of the short-term, more reactive initiatives that you're doing, and also making sure that we're really conscious of the longer-term initiatives and activities that you want to do, the things that you maybe don't have time or haven't got round to yet. Every organization that I'm speaking to at the moment says we've been too reactive. We want to push towards a more longer term, more proactive, more sustainable wellbeing strategy. And this will help you to do that. The reason that you've been thinking short term potentially is just because you've been fighting fires. People are bringing topics to you, they need help immediately, you need to put things in place quickly. Maybe you didn't have them before, and people now are more aware of it than ever before. So have a think, have a look at some of your wellbeing initiatives. Make a list, go through them. If you had to write a list of all of the wellbeing initiatives that you were putting in place this year or wanted to put in place, what would they be? You can use the question box if you want to share some of those with each other. But have a think about some of those wellbeing initiatives. And as you think of them, have a think about step 2. which is, what PERMA pillar is this supporting? And it may overlap. So this isn't always kind of easy to put into specific boxes. Some are, some aren't. But have a think about, which pillar is this most supporting? Is it supporting the positive emotions? Is it supporting the social side, the relationship side? Is it supporting how we're thinking about our purpose? Not maybe as a company, maybe it's as our company, but also as our team. How are we connecting purpose with our team, with the broader strategy? Have a think about some of those initiatives that you've written down, and what PERMA pillar is that supporting? And then obviously noting, is it a short-term reactive thing that you need to do quite quickly? Or is this a longer-term thing that you want to focus on and bring into the organization? And maybe it's longer term because there are probably a few other people that you need to bring into the conversation. The best well-being strategies out there at the moment are connecting what it means to belong, what it means for diverse cultures to stay curious about each other's human experience. We're bringing together leadership, we're bringing together all of these key people strategies, and making sure that they're all connected together. So have a think about those, and those of you who have seen it or have downloaded it, you can start to fill in the template and build on it as you go. You don't have to have, by the way, one thing per PERMA model. There may be lots in different, but that's why it's good to also reflect on, okay, so if we had to give ourselves a score, and this is of course a self-reflection, you could potentially share this with your team or wider to get some wider feedback. But just for now, looking at the self-reflection, where are your gaps, or where are you already doing really great work? A lot of people last year were talking about meaning and purpose. It would surprise me if people hadn't done work around purpose and making sure that people could have those conversations, individual and team level. But maybe not. And you know, the point of this is to have a useful framework, a useful guide to reflect on whether your initiatives are relating to what makes us as human beings flourish and thrive at our very core, as our fundamental kind of human being, and what's natural to us as human beings. So have a look. And obviously you can therefore look at, okay, so how do I get to all green? The point of this is we may never get to all green. It's like any strategy, you know, maybe there's always going to be things that you want to add or do different, you know, trial, test, measure. We really encourage, when we're looking at the wellbeing strategy, that we do apply the growth mindset. You know, it's not about getting it perfect. What is a perfect strategy? Things might change within 3 months and you might have to rethink this, but at least you're being conscious about the activities and the initiatives that you're providing to people. Because if you do this really well, again, the reason that we're using the PERMA model, there's a couple of questions on kind of the research behind it. Have a look at Dr. Martin Seligman and the research that he's put into it. There's been an awful lot of kind of peer reviews as well. When I share these slides around, you'll get these slides afterwards, and have a look. There's a hyperlink in there. But we're connecting those core elements of what makes us human to those initiatives. Quick poll time, because I realize that I've gone through this incredibly quickly. And the idea here is, you know, during your lunch break, give you a bit of a thought, and then give you something practical to go away and think about and talk about. If you want any kind of help and guidance and thoughts, you've got the team here, you've got me. I'll put my email address at the end of this. But the question that we always get is, well, how do we know that we're moving in the right direction with this? How do we know that this new approach, this framework of strategy is working for us? And we've done some great work across public and private sectors, big and small, applying the PERMA model to wellbeing strategies. We've done some great measures. People have put this into these questions into the people survey, etc. And these are some of the results that we've got out of it that I wanted to share. But if I launch, for example, this question to you, so hopefully that poll is open. If you could just put your answers in there. These are some of the questions that you can build into your kind of people survey, or maybe it's more of a department survey, or maybe just questions that you ask your team during the check-in. And it will really give you an idea of whether you're moving in the right direction. So that first question, I often feel positive at work, it's relating to the positive emotions part of PERMA. Okay, so there's other ways that you can ask that question, but the idea is how often are you building gratitude into your day? How positive are you really when you think about your work day? I'm going to close that poll, and I will share the responses to this, by the way, afterwards. But maybe let's have a go at this one and have a different couple of answers. So try that. I regularly get absorbed by the work that I do. Again, this is relating to the engagement or the strengths part of the PERMA model. And again, by asking these questions within your team, you're getting a real sense of where are we needing to tap into? What actions can I take to improve people's positive emotions this month or this quarter or whatever time period you've measured? It gives you a really simple and practical way to focus on what you need to do, what initiatives are going to work. And that's where you can bring out your wellbeing strategy template. Hey, we can notice that, you know, relationships is really down actually at the moment. People aren't coming back into the office as much as we thought they would. So what initiatives are we going to do to help people connect on a really more meaningful and human basis around relationships? What social platforms can we build in? Thank you, those of you who are answering these questions. I'll put just a final one on, because this is the one that catches a lot of people out, and I haven't covered the accomplishment side, and it's a really important component when you think about your own well-being. These questions are really important for yourself, not just for other people. But think about, do you accomplish something every day, or do you feel like you're just kind of grafting and not really getting anywhere? And why is that? And it's really easy to kind of get stuck into that mentality where we just continue going and don't celebrate and don't take time to pause. We've got a lot of clients at the moment saying we just don't celebrate the progress that we've made in the last year because it's been so difficult and it's been so tough. So what are we doing to help people celebrate those accomplishments, or at least be conscious and realize those accomplishments more frequently? All right, I'll close the poll and I won't do any more. But those questions, thank you. There's been a few. I can't see all of them actually because there's quite a few. So if I haven't answered any of those questions that have come through, I will answer them afterwards. So I'll make sure that I send out in the communications afterwards, because I am conscious of keeping you longer than I said. Thank you. I hope that's been really helpful. There are some practical ways that Bailey and French can help. We launch, and as I've mentioned, you know, the knowledge building is really critical, but so is the skill development. How are we helping people to have conversations around these 5 elements of the PERMA model? And then the 6th one is, how do we build resilience? And Martin Seligman, his research talks about that additional 6th one. But stay connected to us. I'd love to hear how you get on with your wellbeing strategy. I genuinely would. I really, this year I've heard so much about, we really want to be doing this properly. And I think the willpower, I can really resonate with that. You know, when you're making a change, and, you know, we're not just talking New Year's resolutions, but when you're making a change, it's so hard to make a change when you haven't got the time, you're overloaded with work, you've got more and more happening. So please stay connected to us. We'd love to hear how you get on. Connect with us on LinkedIn, follow the Bailey and French page. We've also got the Human Experience Tuesday Forum, which is something that we were doing a little bit of last year, but my colleague Ben is leading on that. So there's an email address there for you. If you want to get involved, hear more about what that actually means, email him, message him directly. We've got the Monday live events. I don't know how many of you have been joining us, but it's great every Monday morning at 8:30, just talking about some of the key topics to be aware of in the week and what's been going on, and maybe some hints and tips on sharing some of the things that we can do to improve our well-being, our leadership. You know, how do we strive for better innovation? How do we overcome change and challenge? sign up to the newsletter or get in touch. You know, we'd love to stay connected. Thank you for the time today. I'm 1 minute over, but I hope that's been useful. I will go through those questions. Thank you for writing them in and putting those kind of considerations in. I hope you're ready for the next one. The next monthly webinar, so we'll be hosting these monthly, will be on some of those other aspects around the human experience. So it's also very well connected to the wellbeing strategy. I hope you join it. I believe it's Ben and Jamie who are doing the next one. So you won't be stuck with me every time, I promise. But thank you, and I hope you have a good rest of the week.